I'm an older comedian, so when I get up and I want to do material on arthritis, maybe not everybody there will get all my arthritis jokes, but they get pain, they get uncomfortable, they get aging. I have some of my students that are like, I'm so old, I'm a senior. So there are millions of ways that we can connect with each other that I think is such a gift. And ideally, when people leave a comedy club, they should feel light and they should feel connected. Ideally.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Language Therapy with Dr. K, a podcast from the USC Dornsife Institute of Armenian Studies. My guest today is Judith Shelton, professor of stand-up comedy and improvisation at the USC School of Dramatic Arts. Before teaching stand-up, Jude was a professional actor for decades, starting with her work with the Groundlings, earning her SAG card for her role as Kramer's girlfriend in Seinfeld, and performing in some of the hottest venues in the LA comedy scene. We first discussed the language behind stand-up. Why do we call stand-up stand-up? What is the theory that connects it to the mob scene? And how do we have these kind of combative, violent terms? Everything from punchline to killing it to bombing it. And then we shift to the taboos related to teaching stand-up. Can one teach comedy? What aspects of it can be taught and what can't be taught? And finally, we talk about the power of stand-up to really expand our humanity, to help us connect, to help us be more empathetic, particularly Jude's experience in teaching it to students of all backgrounds at USC for the past decade. She articulates some of the really important life lessons that students take away after studying stand-up. So join us for a very insightful, very entertaining conversation on the manipulation of language and the power of comedy. Judith Shelton, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I was just telling you how excited I am to have this conversation because stand-up and comedy in general are things I've been thinking about, writing about, musing about in my work as a language scholar, and to actually get to talk to someone, a practitioner and a teacher and a colleague at USC is just the biggest thrill.
Wow, thank you. I'm so honored. I'm really honored to look at stand-up in this way with such reverence. It's really a joy. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you my traditional question. Because I love it and the responses I get are often so interesting and so insightful. If you could tell the story of your life very quickly through language or the languages, and language writ large, it could be a variety of language, a dialect, an accent, and so on, what would that story look like?
Wow. Well, I was adopted, and I grew up in Canada, in Vancouver, British Columbia, and then I came down to Orange County. So there's some of that informs a little bit of my accent. And then I was sent to boarding school, and I was raised by nuns in Colorado who were all from Chicago. So there's a lot there in terms of my accent, some of my idioms. In college, I studied Spanish. My major was theater, and then my minor was accounting, which was miserable. And no offense to anybody, it was just hard for me. But I was very in boarding school. It was a Catholic boarding school, so we had a lot of students from Mexico. So I really wanted to learn the language. I wanted to learn what their pop songs were about. I wanted to also the humor. That's something that interests me, is what does humor look like, sound like in other languages. So I studied Spanish all through college. I got a very small scholarship to study abroad at the University of Madrid. And then, of course, one of my first sweethearts was Mexican. So I could practice. Now, I never practice Spanish because I feel sort of embarrassed. And then I also started to learn sign language because I'm very visual, and stand-up is a lot about words, but for me as a performer, it's a lot about physicality as well. So being that sign language is so obviously so visual, so I'm interested in it. Am I great at any of them? No. But I love language. I am interested in comedy in other languages.
It's interesting because I remember in my language acquisition classes in grad school, something that was commonly repeated was by age 5, a native-speaking child has command of humor. And it's such a sign of fluency, is if you can be funny in a language. And also as an adult, if you're learning a second language, if you reach that moment of understanding, much less producing humor, that's a true sign of competence and fluency.
Amazing.
Right?
Yes.
It's so fascinating how humor is this kind of measure of true competency, true fluency, because it's not just the lexicon or the kind of semantic layering, but it's also the sociocultural context required. So.
And also with children, so much of comedy and therefore stand-up is manipulation, so manipulating. So, of course, if we can get a laugh out of our parents, they don't mind if we steal that cookie.
Yes.
So that's so interesting.
It truly is fascinating. I wanted to start with defining some of our terms because we assume so often that we all have shared definitions of things. And as I was preparing for this conversation, I thought, okay, but what is stand-up? How do we define stand-up, particularly in the larger repertoire of performance and comedy? What is your definition of stand-up?
Well, stand-up springs from vaudeville. And in vaudeville, comedy was represented by families, by double acts.
And vaudeville, maybe we can quickly define vaudeville too for those.
Vaudeville was a form of entertainment at the turn of the 20th century, and it was bawdy. There were I don't know if I'm explaining it well, but vaudeville was a form of American entertainment that included singers, dancers, animals, children, yes. And it was very violent. It was violent because we're talking about varying levels of intelligence or intellectual understanding. So there was a lot of physical comedy, and boy, a lot of that involved smaller children. If they were small, you could stuff them into a cannon and shoot them across the room. So but it was also hard on the comics. It was a grind. The performing conditions were not great. People were vying for stage time because that's how they made their money. So a stand-up comedian was a comedian who stepped forward and said, I don't need anybody else. I don't need props. I don't need costumes. I don't need songs. I only need myself. And so it started with that idea of standing up on your own. And then when the mob, the Italian syndicate or crime syndicate, let's say that, came and took over a lot of the clubs as vaudeville moved into strip clubs and then into nightclubs. The idea of a stand-up boxer was a boxer who could not be knocked down. So a stand-up comedian, no matter what, could take punches, could throw punches, and could stay standing all by themselves.
This is interesting because per your recommendation, I was listening to this podcast episode with a colleague of yours, Wayne Fetterman.
Wonderful.
Not only a practitioner, actor, producer, and so on, but also a historian of comedy. And he was sharing a conversation I think someone else had with someone of this mob theory of the terminology of stand-up. And also this is another aspect of my research that like language and masculinity, how men perform machismo through language and so on. But another element that was fascinating for me was that a stand-up guy was someone who would close his eyes to whatever was happening behind the scenes. Stay quiet when necessary.
Amazing. Yes. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything.
Exactly.
Yes.
Particularly in that mob-controlled nightclub scene was, and also someone you could count on to, I guess they switched over to like the Vegas scene, and someone you could count on to stick to their allotted time.
Yes.
If it was 45 minutes,
that's what you were doing.
That's what you were doing.
Yes.
So, but what was more fascinating for me was the stripping of everything else.
Yes.
The props, the tools, the slapsticky element. And also, I think that the psychology that you are no longer playing a character.
That's right.
You are you.
Yes.
On stage.
Yes. And that took a while. Early stand-up comedians were still relying on setup, punch, joke structure. So they were still relying on that, which, listen, stand-up punch exists in all comedy. We have to set something up in order to knock it down, and we have to blow up that balloon, build the tension before we pop it. But the idea of a strictly one-liner joke with a setup and punch, a lot of comedians don't work in that way. But it is interesting that just by them standing there in their suit, with their pockets square, it meant that they were being who they were, even though they weren't always. Yes.
Right. So you just used up setup, punchline, and so on. I kind of want to do a little vocab review.
Yes.
A little glossary, because all of those terms, so like punchline, a bit, killing it, bombing, and taking a hit, and so on, it's quite violent.
Yes. Yeah.
And visual.
Yes.
Striking. Why do you think the language of comedy is so combative? And what does that say about how performers and how the audience perceives failure? Perhaps, I don't know, resilience? What do you make of it? And where do you think those terms come from?
Well, it comes from vaudeville, and then it works its way through the crime syndicate. And I have found that the language is very self-important. Yes, this is controversial, but I feel like comics are, this is crazy that I'm going to say this, but comics are frustrated rock stars in a way. Comedy isn't necessarily considered cool unless you are great at it. And comedy can lead to, there are people, women, for the most part, waiting outside the comedy club's doors, waiting for the comedians. It is a way to display your plumage, to walk around very confident, to say who you are. Believe me, there is a masculine element. However, I'm a woman, and I use comedy to be, it hasn't worked out for me, let's be honest, but to be attractive, to be cool, to be mesmerizing. So I think that language also comes from, or maybe the language was there and then it informed this is this is not elevated language, but it creates a bunch of people who feel like badasses. And I'm sorry to use, I don't know what other word to use, but to stay on stage, to stay there, to make the audience laugh, to win them over, to lose them, to get them back, to leave them wanting more, feels like you have done something glorious. And if you see it on paper, you didn't save anybody's life, you didn't rescue any babies from a burning building, but people are afraid to do that. And when you can do it and do it well, night after night after night, you feel pretty amazing.
I can't tell you how many light bulbs are firing.
Yeah, I could see it.
Because all my work on language and masculinity now is intersecting with what you're saying.
Yes.
Which is... So what I study is conflict negotiation among Armenian men, particularly men in diaspora, who in many other domains of their life are English dominant, but negotiate conflict in Armenian.
Whoa.
And the register of this language is not high.
Yes.
However, your entire capacity and potential of coming out on top, and I'm using that very intentionally, is based on wit and manipulating words and manipulating what your opponent has said according to a set of rules that we all should know. And it seems almost exactly like what you're just describing is... it's not elevated language, and yet I think part of the reason I've thought so much about stand-up comedy is because we're stripped of everything else. Language is your main tool.
Yes.
And some people dismiss it because it's not elevated, philosophical, poetic, literary language. And yet if you think about the manipulation that's happening, the wordplay, the choices, the specificity, the intentionality, and I just immediately now had a flashback to the first linguistics class I took as an undergrad, and we were watching George Carlin.
Amazing, a master.
A master not only of manipulating language, but also going behind the scenes and showing how English works and doesn't work. I remember we watched a bit about, like, what was it, the big red balloon? I don't even remember, but how in English, size has to come before color, because if you say color before size, and because I knew several other languages, I understood how dependent English is on word order, whereas languages like Armenian or Russian or German that are based on cases, it didn't matter if big came before red.
Yes.
And I just, to think about comedians as some of the greatest philosophers and those who hold mirrors up to society, I think is very fascinating for me.
Yes. I do feel like I have to say it starts non-verbally. So that idea of communicating, again, manipulating, we, in stand-up, we are manipulating the audience. We are puppet masters in a way. And so it does start non-verbally, but you are right. And even though the language may not be elevated, again, we're working to a room of people that may not all be on the same page. So we use all our skills, all our tools. But that takes so much time. Comedians, when they're working out a joke, and it takes years, they put the word big before and after. They put big way back here. They put the balloon here. They try all the different ways to see what lands with an audience. So that takes so much time. And it's interesting because people are often like, hey, I got a lot to say. I want to get on stage. And I'm like, yes, I want you to do that. And it takes time. It takes time and commitment because, everybody, I think, interacts with comedy all the time from a very young age. But when you are doing it, I'm so embarrassed that I'm doing things like this, but when you are doing it intentionally, that takes process. It takes going and practicing it over and over again. So yes, boy, I'm not an expert in this, but how, men were predominantly the comedians, and it has shaped how comedy, it has shaped, it's feisty, it's playful, it's, you know, and you have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to go there. You have to be willing to go all the way there. Yeah.
And we'll come back to that because that's something I've been thinking about as well. So one of the first, I discovered you in a faculty highlight newsletter we get at USC. And you should have seen my face. I was like eating it up. Jude, I was so excited that I have a colleague like you who is a practitioner but also teaches stand-up. And I think something you said is it's not cool to teach stand-up, or it hasn't been perceived as something that can even be teachable.
That's right.
And I wonder if you could talk about the taboos around teaching comedy and what your journey has been. I guess the thing I'm wondering about is now that you have this experience both doing stand-up and teaching, what can be taught and what can't be taught?
Well, and I have to say, I feel as a comic, I have to be clear, I don't perform as much now as I should. I was going to say as I like, but I don't exactly feel a huge draw right now. I just want to sideline on this because to do stand-up, you have to want to say something. And right now, I don't know what that is. And to figure it out, that takes time and effort. And I do stand up when friends invite me to do stand up, and I love it so much. But I have changed, especially after the pandemic. And so there's the process of figuring out who I am and what I want to say is a long process. And I have, for some reason, and believe me, I am talking to my therapist about it. Why am I not doing it right now? And I'm not sure what that answer is. So I just want to be transparent about that. And believe me, it plays in my head. Like, you should be doing more stand-up. But the taboo, oh my goodness. When I was coming up as a stand-up, there was a woman who was teaching stand-up, and everybody was like, oh, you took a class? People really looked down on it. And so when I started teaching, and listen, I started teaching out of need. I had done stand-up for a long time, and then I took a sideline and started working as a bookkeeper. And I was working for a CPA. And I was kind of bored, and especially in the downtime, so I started poking around improv, and I found a theater on Hollywood Boulevard, IO West, which is not there anymore, unfortunately, but I started to do improv there. I'm going to make this a short story, and I loved improv because it's the opposite. It's art by committee, so you need somebody else. Not always, but it's, the yes and idea of I'm going to say something, I'm going to yes it and it. Anyway, art by committee, which felt so spiritual and wonderful for me. So while I was there, the improvisers were like, hey, Jude, can you teach stand-up? And my first thought was, heck no, you don't teach stand-up. But I needed the money. I'll be honest, I was an actor, and I started teaching it, and I fell in love with it. Absolutely the best decision I ever made. And I got made fun of a lot. A lot of people had a problem with me teaching stand-up.
But why do you think that is? Is it because there is this perception that you're innately funny or not? Is it because part of the grind is figuring it out on your own?
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, there's something with you're innately funny, but what it really is kind of this macho feeling of you should do it on your own. You should grind on your own. You should take those hits and you should get back up, and it should be hard. It should be difficult. And you should do it on your own. And, my thought was I grew up when I was really young dancing. I didn't teach myself to dance. I took classes, right? And I wanted to study with a bunch of different people. Same with improv. You wanted to work with every improv teacher and see how they did it and how they could put their fingerprint on your work. And so I think it really does come from that. And listen, I had it. When I was a young comedian and I'd hear somebody took a class, I'd be like, and then look, this is what I'm doing. So this is the inner turmoil. But what I love about it, and I think part of it comes from my improv training, there is something with being in a, listen, honestly, the facts are when somebody takes a class, they generate a lot of material. Now, generating material is one thing and being able to perform it is another. And you cannot be a good comic without performing, without being up in front of a live audience. You just cannot get there.
So generating material is the content.
Yes.
Performing is the delivery.
The delivery, absolutely. And so, yes, we can generate. We perform for each other in class, but it becomes insular and people start to fill in the gaps and they fall in love with you and they're like, that's great. Where an audience is like, I don't know this person at all, so I need more information. So I always tell my comics that you cannot be a great comic without making strangers laugh, and you have to do that as much as possible. But I feel like a class, first of all, it's accountability. And, this is my problem is I can see both sides of everything. As I'm saying that, yes, it's accountability, but when that accountability is gone, does the comedian get up and go to open mics? And I would say out of the thousands of comedians I've worked with by now, because I had my own school for many years, and then I've been here for 9 years, many of them don't keep going because going to an open mic and getting up there and facing a very cold room who could care less and why are you here is difficult. And also here at USC, teaching stand-up, I'm not just teaching comics who want their own sitcom. I'm teaching all kinds of people who maybe want to break from life, from their struggles, from their studies, or want to be able to develop that sense, that comedic sense, which is so much a part of communication is comedy.
So this is interesting because recently I was watching this podcast episode and the guest was the leading evolutionary anthropologist on love and attraction. Ooh. I promise this is going to make sense.
I'm in. I don't care.
You're in. Because I was an anthropology major as an undergrad. And she was talking about how social media has really upended our evolutionary signals and cues and instincts in mate selection. Because so much of it is based on physicality, yes. on developing physical intimacy, and her two suggestions for being more attractive or developing intimacy where you need to laugh with someone and you need to dance with someone.
Oh, man, that sounds good.
And I have this I have this set of quotes from you that I loved so much. And I think one of them you said something like the shortest distance between two people is a shared laugh.
Yes.
And it immediately made me think of this conversation with this evolutionary anthropologist of how important it is to laugh together in terms of like building intimacy or creating this connection. And of course, we just diverted from my main question, which was what can be taught and what can't be taught. Okay. But I was also thinking about I don't know if you've been in D.C. A couple of years ago, they opened a new museum. It's called Planet Word. Have you heard about it? It's a museum dedicated to language.
Wow.
It is
in D.C.
In D.C.
Okay.
It's amazing. I interviewed the founder of the museum for this podcast. And there is and the target age is like 10 to 14. But I tell you, as a 40-year-old, I had the best time of my life. And there's like a joke room, and there's some like little tableaus about what makes a good joke, and then you can like tell jokes with a partner and so on and so on. So I guess one thing I was thinking about in preparation for this conversation with you is there a formula to a good joke, and is that part of the teaching?
Yes.
How formulaic are jokes?
Well, the basic formula is set up, punch, but that can be physical. Steve Martin would come out at the beginning of a show, look at his audience, and then place his nose on the microphone. There's no words, but there is a setup of tension and then a release. But also, yes, there are formulas, and there's a lot of great books on how to write jokes. Because if you look at late night comedy, there's a lot of formula there. If you look at any topical news comedy, political comedy, there's a lot. There's a rhythm to it, and things are placed in specific areas. So yes, there's a formula. I don't teach that in level 1. I introduce no books, no formulas, because I want the students to figure out how they're going to do it. Because at the end, there still is a human artist there who is creating something. And I want to see, is there something new? Is there something new? I would be bored stiff if they had to write jokes in a certain way and each of them looked the same. I had a student in my class who English was his second language, and he wasn't totally comfortable with his English. So it's so interesting when you're talking about comedy and can you make somebody laugh in another language. He wasn't fully confident. I thought he could do it, but he himself wasn't confident. And he really wanted to have fun in the class. And so he was struggling. And then one day he came in with a box that just barely fit over his head. And on each side of the box was an expression. So one was smiling, you turn the box, one was like winking, you turn the box, one was, oh, and then the very end when he bowed, there were the X's as if he was dead. And so he would tell jokes and the audience may not get it, but he turned the box to the proper, it was the most fun, the most creative. He was a musician. It was so amazing to me. I had one student who did all of her work silently, so it was all physical. I've had one student who brought up a bunch of puppets and silently took time setting the puppets out, and then at the end told one joke and put all the puppets back. He never used the puppets. So again, it's this idea of what can I create? As actors, we do that too. What can I create in this moment? What can I create in the audition room? What can I create for the audience? And so I think maybe I lost what your original question was, Shoshana.
It's okay. It was so fast. What can be taught and what can't be taught?
So people ask me that all the time, and I often get other comedians that are like, you can't teach it. And I would say I've worked with a lot of people. I lost count after like 1,500, but I've worked with a lot of people, and there were only 2 people who truly were not funny. Truly. I don't know what. I tried so hard, and they truly were not funny. And the funny thing was, one of them was a comedy writer, but could not. It was the weirdest. I'm still freaked out by it. But I do believe that you can teach people comedy by allowing them to be funny, allowing them. And everybody thinks different things are funny. This is why we love cat videos. This is why, we have cat videos all the way to George Carlin. It's like people have different things they think are funny. So really, as a teacher, what I do is allow. So I allow them. I'll give them prompts, and I won't tell them how to do it. And I'll just say, hey, get up. So at the beginning, they just get up and talk. So the very first day, we read through the syllabus, and then I make them get up and start talking. And in there, when they do their final papers, they're like, that was the scariest day. But there's 2 things that happen there. 1, I get to see what they think is funny. And 2, they have no time to be perfect. So is allowing them. And especially when I'm working with a young comic, we do talk, I'll ask them questions. Tell me about your parents. Tell me about the town that you came from. And they start with the base, like just understanding who they are. What is your biggest regret? What, all these things. It's very elemental. So they have a firm ground, but I don't tell them how to talk about it. So, one person came up and it was something like, tell me about your parents. And it was just them banging on a piece of wood. It's so weird and so fun. So I had one student in the business school. He was such a rascal, such a fun student that I did not understand for probably the first 4 weeks. I didn't get him at all, which I tell them it doesn't matter if I get you or not, because I'm much older than they are. So I look and see, are they getting laughs? But he did, this is so weird that I'm going to say this on this podcast, but he would get a box, because we were in the drama school, right? So there's all these props. So he'd get a box, he'd stand on the box, and then he wrote a bunch of sonnets about his penis. And I was like, okay, this is what? Come on, man. But I don't know, he kept doing it, and he figured out a way to make it funny, and it was so weird. So first of all, the setup of him getting on the box, what's going on, and then him talking in this flowery language, and you figure out, he's talking about his penis. So, yes, I come from the very firm idea that everybody understands comedy. Everybody understands laughter and making people laugh and that joy. And so then I just allow them to do it in their own way. So I do not teach formulas. There are a lot of teachers who do and will tell you how to do it. I'm just the kind of person, when it's any kind of art, I get very uncomfortable when people are like, no, this is how you do it. Now, I have taken painting classes and they can show me how to use the brush strokes, and that's very helpful. But I just do not like the word no or wrong. I don't think there's any no or wrong. It's really, are you connecting with the audience and are you getting a laugh? Because comedy is all about connection.
It's so interesting, your use of the word allow, because for 2 decades I've been teaching language, particularly Armenian as a heritage language. So you have all those insecurities of a young person who is dominant in English, but identifies as Armenian or as some kind of Armenian and has all of this anxiety and pressure and psychological baggage. And then I've taught history and culture and literature and so on, but still for that student who has an emotional connection with it, so much of the teaching is simply allowing them to be in a safe space and allowing them to display themselves in a way where they're not being judged, in a way where they're not being pursued or pursued in the sense of they have this sense that someone is constantly going to catch them on their errors, is going to catch them on their failures. And all of a sudden you say, the way you do it is perfect and interesting and innovative and so on. So this allowing, I think, is allowing and creating a particular environment is such a big aspect of teaching. And I think it's not for non-teachers, perhaps they're not aware that we're not out there teaching formulas or teaching grammar. I'm not teaching grammar to heritage students because they don't think of their heritage language through grammar. They already have competence. It's very intuitive for them. And like you said, they have to figure out the formula by doing, not the other way. When you teach foreign language students, you teach them the rule and then they generate content. But heritage students can already generate content.
That's right.
And you give them the skills to decipher or generate the rules later on. What you need to do is just give them the environment to actually generate in the beginning. So that's why I'm seeing all of these interesting kind of parallels in how we look at teaching.
I got this job. Now, I had been teaching in my own school, which was actually in my friend's art school. And I did that for many, many years. So when I got this job, I was like, how in the world do I grade them? How in the world, how would I teach stand-up in this way? And it's been really great because I feel like SDA, the School of Dramatic Arts, has kind of let me learn how to teach by doing, learn. And that's been so amazing because then you're living it and it's not just a screen or a projection that you put over yourself. Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking of, so I did drama in middle school and high school all throughout. And it's probably the thing I'm most grateful for my public education. And it all happened completely by chance. My English teacher, who was so impressed with how quickly I picked up English, got hired as the drama teacher because the drama teacher quit. And so she just picked her favorite students and was like, could you guys sign up? So there is a class. And it put me on this, journey. But some of the funniest people in my classes were the shyest.
Yes.
They broke so many stereotypes for me. They were the true introverts. And I'm kind of going back to your frustrated rock star statement. Is there a particular personality type? Even stand-up comedians I've interviewed on this podcast, like Mary Basmadjian is a very interesting name in the Armenian American community, and she's so out there in her comedy. She cusses in Armenian as a woman, which is a no-no culturally. She uses sexually explicit language and so on and so on. And yet during the interview, she was so painfully shy.
Yes.
It really kind of did a number on me.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, in your experience, both as a practitioner and a teacher, is there a particular personality type that is attracted to stand-up, both the performance of it and the learning of it?
My initial thought is no.
No.
But I will say that stand-up, because you are there by yourself under the spotlight, it gives you a freedom. It's almost like you're protected. I can do whatever I want up here, ideally with the goal of entertaining people, but I can do whatever I want. Many comedians, myself included, are different on stage. And I can say for me, when I'm on stage, I am my true self. But that true self could not hold a job at USC, could not go to any meeting, should not be like, I am wild and free because I finally have an opportunity to talk. So I think the number one thing is who has something they have to say.
That they can't say
That's
otherwise.
right. Because of cultural things. When I first got this job, and listen, I've been here 9 years, I still think, I better not be fully myself because I'll get fired or people will think I'm weird. So when you're on stage, like my voice even changes. You have that freedom. Nobody, ideally, can hurt you while you're up there. So you can say whatever you want. And I will say that a lot of comedians are, when you go to a comedy club, and let's say you're there before they let the audience in, the comedians are super low key. They might not all be talking to each other. They're sitting in corners. They're very thoughtful. They're serious. There's a lot of comedians who I've met, some of my heroes, who are very serious. And I think because they are very serious about what am I going to say up there and how am I going to say it. Yeah.
It's really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
I remember even in college, I was doing some theater and a friend of mine started a college radio show and I was a guest and he asked me about like what draws me so much to acting. And I said, it's this like rare opportunity to be someone else or a version of yourself that you can't bring to your regular life and not be judged for it.
Yes.
Because you are performing.
Yes.
But I guess the difference with stand-up is you're out there as yourself.
Yes.
Sharing some of your most vulnerable moments, experiences, life stories. And as I was learning more about your work, you said something that really stuck with me, which is students come for the comedy, but they leave with some really important life skills, everything from job interviews to relationship management and so on. And I wonder if you can say more about that. I found that so inspiring and insightful.
Well, in my class, we do have two, and I call them life skills, 2 life skills classes. And now I've added improv as well, but really crowd work and heckling. And if you can do crowd work.
How are those different?
Okay. I'll just finish this thought because of my brain. Yes. If you can do crowd work and handle heckling, you can get through anything. You can get through a job interview. You can get through a bad date, a first date, an argument with your parents, having a uncomfortability at the market, in line at the market. So it's an amazing life skill. How they're different. So crowd work is when the comedian initiates connection with an audience member. So, hey, where are you from? What are you doing? So initiates. Heckling is when the audience member initiates the connection with the comic. And usually it's, it's any heckling is a disruption in flow. A lot of people think heckling is just, boo, you stink. But heckling is any disruption in flow. If you look at comedians, a lot of them are really thinking, they're really working up there. And anything, even something amazing like, I love you, can be a heckle because it disrupts the flow. So they get those skills. And I'll tell you a funny story. So when we were, during the pandemic, we were all online, and the students had to do their final show online. And one of the students said, hey, because, we were going to have all the parents, whatever, watching. Hey, is it okay if we flirt with the parents? And I was like, it's weird, but you can do what you want. Let's see how it goes. I mean, it's weird. And this one comedian just started flirting with the parents. And I'm telling you, it was so fun. But he could do that because he was comfortable reaching out. Because when you open that door to an audience member, it's hard to shut it again. Because you don't know, there are a few people in the audience who think they could be on stage and think they could do it better than you can. So it is all about opening a door and shutting a door and opening a door. And how do we shut the door without being rude? And, can I shut the door?
And it's very spontaneous in opposition to the very planned and intentional bit you're doing.
That is absolutely right. Good point. It's like when so we think of it, I think of it sometimes as a train track. I'm on the train. I know where I'm going. I know where I want to take these people. I know where I want to go. And then you get interrupted, and it's like, And there was a comedian I worked with. I was on her payroll where she would pay me to heckle her because she was, an amazing comedian. I think I can say her name, Maria Bamford, an amazing, one of my all-time favorites. And she was scripted and would work so hard. I mean, she was is just amazing. Worked so hard on this script. And imagine knocking a train off a track, how hard it is to get that train back. So, yes, it can completely scramble your brain. Listen, sometimes, I've had this too, especially when I was a young comic, making eye contact with somebody in the audience will completely throw you off. You'll lose your word, what was next. And so we practice that to become fluid, flexible, like a reed, that you can handle whatever comes up.
I mean, I can only imagine how useful that can be in all the scenarios you described, job interview, date, argument.
Yes.
Because humor also deflates stress and anxiety.
Absolutely. I think just the idea of, I'm going to come at this with humor, the other person says, okay, it's not so serious.
Exactly.
But also, if you can giggle, when we're all on a plane and it hits that bump and then everybody is scared, but then they start laughing, it's like, we're all okay. Yes. Everybody's okay. Yeah.
The other quote that I loved so much when I was reading about your work teaching comedy, you said perfection is not funny.
Yes.
And there was a long paragraph in there, and this is something I worry about both as an educator and as a mom, of what social media has done to our sense of perfection and to our filtered and curated personas that we put out there, even though we all know it's not the true reality, and yet we're all comparing our imperfect lived experience to the perfectly curated experiences we see online. And I think particularly in this day and age, to have students come in and the goal be to share their imperfections, what does that do to their self-esteem, self-image, insecurities? That must be such a incredible space to work in.
It's really fun to see, especially at USC, when these are top students.
Yes.
They're very ambitious,
Yes.
very driven. They're very concerned about how they appear
Yes.
and if they're doing and saying the right things. So it's really fun to see their shoulders drop. And it can take, so our class is 16 weeks, it can take 15 weeks. I had a student who was in aerospace and he wants to be an astronaut. He was terrified that it would even get out that he took a comedy class or that anybody. So I do say to the students, we do not record each other. We do not put anything out that people say. Nothing goes online. This is a place to create. And we allow each other to create with some sort of privacy, which, I will say this as an actor, and I have been an actor for a long time. I'm 58 now. I've been an actor for a long time. And when I was a young actor, there were no fat people in television. And if there was one person and they were stuck in a window or a pipe. You know what I'm saying? There was no legitimate fat person who had a real life and real interests and real loves. And, so what I love about what's going on now is you see every kind of person. They've got crazy teeth. You see all kinds of people that we never saw when I was coming up. Everybody was perfect. So I'm grateful for that because we see more people. Let's just start with people of color.
Yes.
We see more people, which is amazing. But I agree. This idea of I'm going to put my best foot forward, I'm going to show you the best of my life is a huge burden because our lives are not made up of bests.
No.
Look, if we're lucky, we get how many? A couple a year?
And I don't know why this interview with this evolutionary anthropologist is coming up. Something she said also stuck with me. She said it's the imperfections that we find attractive in others.
Yes.
So when we are curating these perfect selves on these social media platforms, we are depriving a potential partner from discovering the quirks that make us unique.
I'm going to take that in myself. Right? It's so true because when you find that interest in somebody, I agree with you in that, especially in dating, it's all about the visual. And I'm a person, I don't get attracted to visual. I'm just not, I don't know if there's something missing, but I don't look at somebody and go, auga. But when you start talking to them and they make you laugh or they talk about a painting in a certain way and you're like, whoa. So I agree with you that letting the students be who they are. And I will tell them stand-up is for the unsavory. So it's for your disappointments, your frustrations, your jealousies, your pettiness. It sounds bleak, but we put all that in and then we kind of pop it like popcorn and it becomes effervescent and bubbly and full of life. Those two things don't go together. But anyway, it becomes something fun. But it does start from why. Have you ever wondered, do you guys go through this? Is this something you're familiar with? So it's this question. And I have seen students because boy, oh boy, they are coming in with this being in their life since they were little. And especially if they get to school, I've had some students say to me, I've been perfect all my life. I cannot be imperfect in this class. Yeah. And I'll say, well, how about we just allow imperfect here, but we don't tell anybody? Just what if you just allow yourself to be feral in this class and let's see what happens. And you can see that because if they're so rigid, what in the world are they telling themselves when they're out in the world? What are they saying at home? My bed isn't made perfectly. The dishes are undone. I'm a bad, bad person. And that, I know from experience, that's a really difficult way to grow up.
And I hadn't thought about USC and the competitiveness it takes to get to a prestigious university like this, because I see it too in my classes, their obsession with getting the A.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And it's like the first day I always tell them, could you focus on what you're going to learn in this class, what you're going to get out of this class? It's interesting because I've often had students tell me in their course reviews that this class was cathartic or therapeutic and so on. And I feel like there's a very parallel element here too. And I thought of like comedy in general, I think, has a very cathartic, therapeutic element, because all the items you listed, the pettiness, the vanity, the disillusionment, and so on, disappointments we've experienced that we're too scared to share. Someone has the courage to get up there and share. And all of a sudden you have this like, yeah, me too.
Yes. And that is such a great feeling when you say something, people in the audience are like, yeah, I've been there. I know what that's like. I do... every time I listen to you, I'm like, yes. And then I kind of forget but yes, they leave feeling more human. And what they say is, and when I read the reviews, that they would never have met most of those people in the class. They might not have hung out together. They saw things from a different perspective. And I think everybody is insular, starting with something you were saying earlier. Everybody sticks to their own kind. Because I understand it, and I don't want to be in a situation where I don't understand. So I'm just going to stay here with people who understand me and I understand them. But then you're cutting off so much beauty and so many ways to grow. And so it's fun to hear like a computer science person talk about what they regret, and then hearing, a drama student talk about their regret. It's just fun. And I agree that it just broadens our world. And that is... Listen, it's for everything, but I'm going to say it as an artist. That's what art is all about. How can you see this in a different way? How can you open your understanding? And opening is softening. It's broadening, and we can let things in. I always tell them when people are laughing, that's when you can put the medicine down. That's when you slip that little vitamin knowledge, is right when their mouths are open. And when they're laughing, people are relaxed and they're open. So to go way back to what you were saying, that a laugh helps us all relax. It's a release of tension.
It's I was, of course, scrolling through social media, and I followed this philosophy page, and now I can't remember who the philosopher was, and I may not be saying the quote exactly, but it said something like, kill the monster while you think it's a monster, because the moment you get to know it, you can't kill it because you no longer view it as a monster.
Wow.
And so much of the kind of research methodology I use in my work are oral history interviews. And even though as a researcher you're supposed to be objective, none of us are objective. We come in with all our subjectivities. But the moment you sit through a 3-4 hour interview where someone tells you their stories, there's no way you don't develop empathy.
It's so true.
There's all of a sudden this monster becomes human.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you relate in ways you could not have fathomed before. And again, I go back to, that's kind of what stand-up is, right? Is someone getting up there, being vulnerable, displaying their imperfections, and you sitting there nodding.
Yeah. And both groups feel seen.
Yes.
Both groups... I've gone through that as well, where I have listened to somebody's story and I've thought to myself, there's no way. I don't like them. Nope, no way. And then you might want to cut this out. I'm not sure, but I remember watching George W. Bush preaching. And I was like, of course. I was like, George Bush. I saw him preaching and I was like, he has a passion. He's also an artist. He's a communicator. Yeah. And it was so wonderful that my heart opened. Yeah. And it's like if we just learn something about people. I was younger then, and it was easier for me to shut doors and just say, nope, not interested, which I'm embarrassed to say. But yes, when you can. And so the comedian wants to be seen. And the audience wants to be seen. And so when the comedian is being seen in a way that the audience wants to be seen, there's such a beautiful thing. And that's why it hurts 10 times more when you can't connect with your audience. Yeah. You get off and you're like, because when we're actors, we have somebody else's lines, somebody else's clothes, somebody else's friends and family all in this. It's not us. But as a comedian, we are standing on that stage and we're talking as ourselves. Now, the audience, for the most part, is going to think that everything you're saying is true and correct. But sometimes comedians, they bend the truth. Sometimes it's not always true. Or if it's too outlandish, the audience doesn't believe anything you say. So there's an interesting dance there as well. Very. But when a comedian gets off the stage, they feel vulnerable and kind of lonely. And the audience will come up to you and be like, I know you now. And it's like, you don't exactly. And so being a road comic, so part of when I teach stand-up, especially in level 2, I have them create a care plan for themselves because you are really putting your heart and soul on the line. And if they don't like it, it hurts. And if they do like it, well, I felt like there was such a connection. This could just be me and all of the things I've gone through, but I feel like there's a connection. Yet when I get off stage, I go to my apartment by myself.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, again, the parallels with teaching are kind of blowing my mind. Your teacher persona is something your students can admire, worship, fall in love with, connect with. But at the end of the day, you go home.
Listen,
and they don't come with you.
No. When I first started working here, I would cry at the end of the year. I would miss them so much, which, listen, I chalked it out. I tried to work it out. But it is so true. Yeah. You come home. I heard some doctor who just put out a book. I can't remember. Emmanuel. His last name is Emmanuel. And he talked about my number one thing for longevity and health as you're getting older. I'm getting older, so I'm thinking even more about that, was do not eat a meal alone. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'd eat every meal alone. And the only thing I think about is, but I get to see my students. Listen, I have friends. I have lots of stuff going on. But seeing my students is truly invigorating. And those first couple of years, when I would come home, I would feel empty. Yes. I remember walking across campus at night because when I first started, I would teach until 8 or 9 p.m. Wow. And so I would walk through campus, and on a Friday, they'd be going to parties, and it was a very sad feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I can relate. Yeah. The final topic I wanted us to broach, which is what brought me to this conversation, is how diverse stand-up comedians have become, and content-wise and performer-wise. If it was, and again, listening to Wayne's kind of historical introduction to stand-up, really it was the kind of white Anglo man in the suit with the little handkerchief. And now you have Black comedians, you have Latino comedians, women, for me, like Amaz Jobrani or Hassan Minhaj, like their stuff, or Ali Wong, I relate. All you have to do is swap out Indian and Persian and Asian with Armenian, and so much of it is relatable. But in the kind of LA Armenian American experience, there, in the past couple of decades, there is this bilingual, bicultural stand-up scene. that excites me so much because young Armenian Americans who wouldn't connect to things Armenian otherwise love this because linguistically it is accessible and culturally it is a reflection of their bicultural, bilingual lives.
They see themselves.
Yes, this idea of being seen. And it makes me so happy. And I guess, like you said, it is kind of this expansion of the world and this humanizing of all of the others we think are so other. And yet...
Oh my gosh, we were talking about Jack Jr.
Yes.
I watched some of his comedy and it was so niche and yet so wonderful.
Right.
So niche. So it felt in a way like this is very human. I am enjoying this, but I'm also learning a lot, which I also appreciate because I want to learn more.
And so much of it is on the nose, right? He's half Mexican, half Armenian.
Yes.
He will literally like lift up his shirt.
I've seen him do that a couple of times.
His hairy belly, that's one side, and then show his back, and that's the other. It's, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But like, it hits a nerve.
Yes.
It hits a nerve because that's our reality. And you don't have to be half Mexican, half Armenian. You could be half X, half Y, or part, X part Z, whatever.
Yes. I do. Listen, it's so diverse now. Actually, comedy took a hard turn where it became people booking. Listen, we're never going to get rid of white men in comedy, but, and I don't want to.
And that's okay.
Listen, I get my students, male students that are like, should I even be talking? And I'm like, yes. Don't let anybody tell you to stop talking. But there was a while there where on a bill, they didn't want a whole lot of white people. So the white people had to kind of wait and let other people talk, which, as an actor too, it became out of favor to be a white actor in a commercial and whatever. And I just kind of sit back and go, we are watching an ebb and flow. We're just watching things move and shift. My mantra to myself to be able to handle lots of things is everything is always changing. So just enjoy, watch what's happening. But it's fantastic because, listen, there are people in the room that night who will leave and say, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not so afraid of them. They're just like us. And I know that sounds silly, but this is what it is all about, is making connection.
Yes.
Comedy, all art, all interaction is connection, communication. There are comedians, and this is the worst thing about getting older, is I cannot remember names. And believe me, my students know this. There's a great comedian who has this very big stutter. So a speech impediment. So it takes a lot longer. And you can imagine it messes with rhythm. It's very different than what we're used to. And yet he proceeds and the audience shifts. So I will tell my students, we tell them how to enjoy us. They don't tell us. We tell them. So if my timing is slower, yes, you're not going to right off the bat get them all on board. But if you stick to it, you can win them over. The same with any of our topics. I'm an older comedian, so when I get up and I want to do material on arthritis, maybe not everybody there will get all my arthritis jokes, but they get pain, they get uncomfortable, they get aging. I have some of my students that are like, I'm so old, I'm a senior. So there are millions of ways that we can connect with each other that I think is such a gift. And ideally, when people leave a comedy club, they should feel light and they should feel connected, ideally.
Now I can't remember the name of, he's a quite well-known Indian-American comedian. He's been on sitcoms, but I remembered this bit he did about as a young Indian boy when he was reading the classics written by white men. He was like, if I could relate to your white heroes, you could probably relate to an...
Amazing.
And I thought it was such a profound...
Was it Aziz Ansari?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe
so
true. That was him.
Yes.
And I thought it was such a, again, profound insight.
Yes.
Of, A lot of my students and friends know this. My favorite novel of all time is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And I read it at the age of 10 in the Armenian. And I thought it was an Armenian novel. And, when he calls her Janet in Armenian, we don't have that so it was Janet. All my life, I thought it was Janet. Anyway, and then in late middle school, early high school, we read it as part of my English lit class. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Yes.
This is an English class? But if an Armenian girl born in the Soviet Union could relate to Jane Eyre, we can all relate to something, So I guess, I don't know, as a concluding thought, as I was preparing, I thought, if anything is language therapy, it's really comedy, right? Because it's using language and the physicality of it. And I'm so grateful you reminded me of that. It's not... The body is not removed.
Yeah, that's right.
The physicality is important.
That's right.
But truly, it's therapy.
Yes. Yeah. And people often say, even when I was teaching adults and not college students who were also adults, but, I had my own place, everybody would kind of joke that my class was therapy. But it is therapy. It's working out, how do I fit? Am I doing this right? Do you understand me? Do I understand you? So it is therapy. And not all comedians maybe would say that they're doing it to work something out, but I still think they are. Even if all they want is a laugh, there is a need there for connection. Yeah.
And to be seen.
And to, I don't know why this is coming up, but to win. To be successful. I'm going to get a laugh from you. And everything we do every day is, can I get into this elevator successfully? I was climbing up the stairs and I was like, thank goodness for these little grippy things. We're all trying to succeed.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, Jude.
I'm telling you, it is because of you to look at this and to think about this. It's really opened my mind and it's given me a little bit of dignity. When I first came here, I was like, do I even belong on this campus? I'm just a little goofball. Tall goofball, but why do I even belong here? And I love that we were able to connect from our two corners, and I just appreciate the reverence that you're giving this art form. So thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so blessed to have such great colleagues. And I guess it's a good reminder for me, too, of the privilege of working on a university campus that gives us access to all of these incredible minds and practitioners.
Listen, it's almost too much sometimes.
Right?
I'm just like, wow. Sometimes I'm like, I cannot learn anymore. But then I go home and I eat something and I get a good rest. But yeah, the wealth of people who not only have all this knowledge, but who want to share it.
Yes.
And who find joy in it. It's such a happy place. It is. I really was worried that it was going to be stuffy and rigid. And yes, there are aspects of that. But boy, I think everybody is coming together to share knowledge. Everybody, even our students. I learned so much from my students.
Oh, every day. Every day. Thank you
so
much.
Thank you. This was fun.
Language Therapy with Dr. K is produced and edited by Brandon Walsh. Geram Murnetian provides technical support with creative direction by Fionn Gamble. Language Therapy with Dr. K is a podcast from the USC Dornsife Institute of Armenian Studies.